I never saw the trap until I was already caught in it. My husband's text message flashed on my screen. "Whatever you do, don't drink the tea." But Margaret's cold eyes were already studying my reaction across the table, cataloging every micro-expression. 3 days ago, I was Elise Grant, blissfully unaware that my new mother-in-law had surveillance photos of me dating back years, or that the perfect facade of the Grant family mansion concealed poisoned secrets and a decades-old death. Now, with my lips hovering over her special family recipe, I realized this wasn't just a visit. It was an interrogation. And she'd been preparing for it since long before I ever met her son. I never wanted to go to the Grant estate. The way Caleb avoided talking about his family, especially his mother, should have been warning enough. But when he received that call about a family health issue, the worry in his eyes made me push aside my reservations. "Are you sure we need to go?" I asked, folding a sweater into my overnight bag. "You haven't spoken to your mother in what, 3 years?" Caleb ran his fingers through his hair, a nervous habit I'd come to recognize during our 2 years together. "It's complicated, Elise. I wouldn't ask if it wasn't important." That was all he would say. My husband of 8 months, usually an open book, had become a locked vault when it came to the Grants. I knew the basics: wealthy family, controlling mother, estranged relationship. The specifics remained a mystery he guarded carefully. As our car wound through the tree-lined drive in upstate New York, the Grant family estate came into view. My breath caught in my throat. The colonial home stood imposing against the autumn backdrop, every hedge perfectly trimmed, every window gleaming. It wasn't just beautiful, it was immaculate. Almost unnaturally so. "You grew up here?" I whispered, unable to imagine my down-to-earth husband in such pristine surroundings. Caleb's knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. "It wasn't a home. It was a museum where we happened to sleep." Before I could ask more, the front door opened. A woman in her early 60s stood there, her silver blonde hair swept into an elegant chignon, her posture military straight. Everything about her screamed perfection, from her pearl earrings to her tailored beige dress. This had to be Margaret Grant. "Caleb, darling." Her voice was honey poured over ice. She embraced him stiffly, then turned her gaze to me. "And this must be Elise. So glad you finally brought her." The way she said it, like I was a homework assignment Caleb had delayed completing, made my skin crawl. Her eyes moved over me methodically, assessing my simple blue dress and minimal jewelry. I suddenly felt underdressed and inadequate. "Mrs. Grant," I extended my hand. "Thank you for having us." "Margaret, please." Her smile didn't reach her eyes. "We're family now, aren't we?" As a house staff member took our bags, I whispered to Caleb, "What did she mean? Finally brought her." He avoided my gaze. "She has a way of making everything sound loaded. Ignore it." We were shown to our room, Caleb's childhood bedroom, now converted to a guest suite. Everything felt staged, like a hotel room rather than a place someone once lived.
No photographs, no mementos.
Nothing personal remained. "You okay?" I asked, noticing how Caleb stood rigidly by the window. "Just remembering." He didn't elaborate. At dinner that evening, I met Daniel, Caleb's older brother. Where Caleb was reserved and thoughtful, Daniel was all charm and confidence. He greeted me with a wide smile and a firm handshake, but something in his eyes made me uneasy, a calculation that matched his mother's. "So the little brother finally brings his bride home," Daniel said, raising his wine glass. "To new family members." Margaret nodded approvingly at her eldest son before turning her attention to me. "Tell me, Elise, what exactly does your family do?" Caleb's been surprisingly vague. And so it began. Throughout the meal, Margaret peppered me with questions that felt less like conversation and more like an interrogation. "Your parents are both gone, correct?"
No siblings.
She took a delicate bite of salmon. "Yes, my mother died when I was young. My father passed while I was in college." "How sad." "Any extended family?" "Just an aunt in Seattle. We're not close." "And you work in graphic design, was it?" "I'm an art therapist, actually." Margaret's eyebrow arched slightly. "How creative." The questions became increasingly personal. "My financial situation."
My health history.
whether Caleb and I plan to have children soon. Each time I answered, I felt like I was giving away pieces of myself that Margaret was collecting for some unknown purpose. Caleb tried to deflect several times, but Margaret easily steered the conversation back to me. Daniel watched with amusement, occasionally throwing in a question of his own. Do you believe in family legacy, Elise? Daniel asked suddenly. The Grant name means something in certain circles. I believe in making your own path, I replied carefully. Margaret's smile tightened. How modern of you. After dinner, I excused myself to use the restroom. As I walked back toward the dining room, I heard raised voices coming from Margaret's study. I paused, knowing I shouldn't eavesdrop, but unable to move away. Already told you. I'm not doing this, Caleb's voice, tight with anger. You owe this family, Caleb. You owe me. Margaret's voice was lower but razor-sharp. I don't owe you anything. That debt was paid.
Was it?
Daniel disagrees. Of course he does. He's always been your puppet. Don't be dramatic. This is about trust. About repayment. I stepped back quickly as the door handle turned. By the time Caleb emerged, I was halfway down the hall, pretending I'd just left the bathroom. His face was flushed, jaw clenched. When he saw me, he tried to relax his features, but the tension remained. Everything okay?
I asked. Fine.
The word was clipped. Just family stuff. That night, in the privacy of our room, Caleb finally apologized. I'm sorry about today. About her. What's really going on, Caleb? Why are we here? I sat on the edge of the bed, watching him pace. He ran his hands over his face. There's no health issue. She wanted to meet you. She could have met me any time in the past 2 years. Why now? And what was that argument about? Old family business. Nothing for you to worry about. He sat beside me, taking my hands. Look, we'll leave first thing tomorrow, okay? I promise. I'm sorry I brought you here. I wanted to press further, but the haunted look in his eyes stopped me. Okay, tomorrow.
I didn't sleep well that night.
The Grant house felt like it was watching us, its perfect surfaces hiding something rotten underneath. I wasn't imagining the tension between Caleb and his family, nor the strange way Margaret looked at me, like she was trying to find something specific in my features. Morning came with artificial cheerfulness. Margaret was in the kitchen when I came down, arranging fresh-cut flowers in a crystal vase. Did you sleep well, dear? She asked, her smile practiced. Yes, thank you. The lie came easily. Wonderful. Caleb's still asleep? When I nodded, she continued. Perfect. Some mother-in-law time. She moved to the stove where a kettle was steaming. I've made some tea. An old family recipe. Very soothing. She poured the amber liquid into a delicate china cup and handed it to me. My mother taught me to make this. Her mother taught her. Tradition matters in this family. I accepted the cup politely. It smells lovely. The secret is in the blend of herbs. Margaret watched me intently. Some say it's almost medicinal in its effects. Something in her tone made my stomach tighten, but I smiled and thanked her. I brought the cup to my lips, the steam warming my face. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Balancing the cup, I glanced at the screen. A text from Caleb. Whatever you do, don't drink the tea. I'm coming. Act normal. My heart stopped. I looked up at Margaret, who was watching me with that same subtle intensity, waiting. I kept my expression neutral as I lowered the cup slightly. It's lovely, I said, pretending to take a small sip while keeping my lips firmly closed. Margaret's smile widened almost imperceptibly. Drink up, dear. It's best when it's hot. The teacup felt impossibly heavy in my hands as I maintained my smile for Margaret. My mind raced. Why would Caleb warn me about the tea? What could possibly be in it? I brought the cup to my lips again, mimicking a sip while keeping my mouth closed. It's delicious, I lied, setting the cup down on the saucer. Very unique flavor. Margaret watched me with the focus of a hawk tracking a field mouse. It's an acquired taste. The effects are quite remarkable. Before I could respond, Caleb appeared in the doorway, his hair still mussed from sleep. His eyes immediately went to the teacup in front of me. "Morning," he said, too brightly. "Ready to hit the road, Elise?" Margaret's smile dimmed slightly. "So soon? I thought we'd have the whole day together. I rarely get to see my son and his new wife." "Work emergency," Caleb said smoothly, though I could see the tension in his shoulders. "Can't be helped. At least have some tea before you go," Margaret offered, reaching for another cup. "We really should get on the road," Caleb insisted, placing his hand on my shoulder. "Traffic." I stood, grateful for the excuse to leave the tea behind. "Thank you for your hospitality, Margaret." She nodded, her eyes flickering between us. "Next time, you'll have to stay longer. We have so much more to discuss." The moment we were upstairs in our room, I turned to Caleb. "What was in that tea?" He was already pulling our bags from the closet. "We need to leave tonight. Please trust me." "Tonight? You just told your mother we're leaving now." "I know, but we need to keep up appearances for a few more hours." He lowered his voice. "Just don't eat or drink anything else she offers you." "Caleb, you're scaring me. What's going on?" He paused, his expression torn between fear and guilt. "The less you know, the safer you'll be." I grabbed his arm. "That's not good enough. If I'm in danger, I deserve to know why." "You're not in danger," he said quickly. "Too quickly. Not if we leave tonight. Trust me, Elise." But I couldn't shake the feeling that I was missing something critical. Was I being paranoid, or was there something genuinely sinister happening in this pristine house? While Caleb was cornered by Daniel for a brotherly chat that afternoon, I took the opportunity to explore. The house was massive, with corridors that seemed designed to confuse visitors. Most doors were unlocked, guest rooms, sitting rooms, a library, all impeccably decorated but feeling unlived in. In the east wing, I found a locked door. Something about it drew me, perhaps the fact that it was the only door I'd encountered that was secured. I tried the handle again, confirming it was locked, then glanced down the hallway. Empty. On a hunch, I checked the decorative vase on a nearby console table. Under the dried flowers, I found a small key. It fit perfectly. Inside was what appeared to be Margaret's private study. Unlike the rest of the house, this room felt used. Papers were stacked on the desk, books lined the shelves, and a laptop sat open though powered down. Against one wall stood a filing cabinet. The bottom drawer was locked, but the others opened easily. I rifled through them quickly, heart pounding, until a label caught my eye. Elise Carter. My maiden name. On a file in my mother-in-law's cabinet. I pulled it out with trembling hands. Inside were photographs, dozens of them. Me leaving my apartment building. Me at work with my therapy clients. Me having coffee with friends. The timestamps made my blood run cold. Some were from 6 months ago, long before Caleb and I were married. Others were from over a year ago, when we'd just started dating. I had been watched, followed, investigated. One photo showed me entering my office building, date stamped from 18 months ago. Attached was a note in elegant handwriting. Subject continues employment at Greenwood Center. No connection found to Target yet. Target? What Target? Footsteps in the hallway sent me scrambling. I quickly replaced the file, closed the drawer, and slipped out of the room, locking it behind me. I barely made it around the corner before Margaret appeared, carrying a stack of books. "Elise? Are you lost, dear?" Her voice was pleasant, but her eyes were sharp. "Just exploring," I said, forcing a smile. "It's a beautiful home." "Yes, we're very fortunate." She tilted her head slightly. "Some areas are private, of course. Family matters." "Of course," I echoed. I was just heading back to find Caleb. That evening, after an excruciatingly tense dinner where I picked at my food but didn't eat, I confronted Caleb in our room. "I found a file with my name on it in your mother's study," I said without preamble. "She's been having me followed for at least a year and a half." "Why?" Caleb's face paled. "You went into her study?" "Elise, that's—" "Don't you dare make this about me snooping." I cut him off. "Explain." "Now." He sank onto the bed, shoulders slumped. She had you investigated before we got engaged.
Why?
And how did you know about this? I found out recently. That's why I've been acting strange. He looked up at me, his eyes pleading. I was going to tell you, but I wanted to get you away from here first. Tell me what exactly? He took a deep breath. My father died under suspicious circumstances years ago. Officially, it was ruled a heart attack, but Margaret never believed that. What does that have to do with me? Margaret has this theory. He hesitated. She believes you're somehow connected to what happened back then. I stared at him, incredulous. That's insane. I never even met your father. I was a teenager when he died. I know. It doesn't make sense. He reached for my hand, but I pulled away. That's why we need to leave. Tonight. I've packed our things. We'll wait until everyone's asleep, then go. And you really didn't know about this until recently? I swear, Elise. I would never have brought you here if I'd known what she was planning. I wanted to believe him. After 2 years together, I thought I knew Caleb completely. But now, in this house full of secrets, I wasn't sure I knew him at all. Around midnight, we quietly gathered our bags. The house was silent as we crept down the stairs, avoiding the spots Caleb knew would creak. We were almost to the front door when the lights suddenly flicked on. Margaret stood at the bottom of the stairs, wrapped in a silk robe, her face a mask of disappointment. Daniel leaned against the doorframe to the living room, arms crossed. Going somewhere? Daniel asked, his tone casual, but his eyes cold. My heart hammered against my ribs as Margaret stepped forward, her silk robe swishing softly against the polished floor. At this hour? She checked her watch with exaggerated concern. It's nearly 1 a.m. Surely whatever's pulling you away can wait until after breakfast. Caleb's hand found mine, squeezing tightly. We need to go, Mother. Without saying goodbye, without explaining, Margaret's voice remained even, controlled. Let's all just talk. I'm sure we can sort this out like adults. I glanced at Caleb, whose jaw was set in a hard line. Part of me wanted to push past them and run, but something in Margaret's demeanor made me hesitate. We were caught in their trap, but perhaps playing along would reveal more about what was happening. I gave Caleb a slight nod. A quick talk, I conceded. Daniel's smile was all teeth as he gestured toward the living room. After you. The 4 of us settled into the oppressively formal living room. Margaret perched on an antique chair like a queen on her throne, while Daniel stood behind her, a loyal sentinel. Caleb and I sat on the sofa across from them, our bags still by our sides, a silent statement of our intentions. I believe we should clear the air, Margaret began, her voice deceptively gentle. Elise, I'm concerned that you may not be who you say you are. Excuse me? I couldn't keep the edge from my voice. Margaret reached for a folder on the side table, the same one I'd found in her study. Your mother was Emily Carter, correct? Yes, I answered cautiously. She slid a photograph across the coffee table. I picked it up, my breath catching. It showed a young woman with my eyes and smile, standing on what appeared to be the grounds of this very estate. Your mother worked for the Grant family 25 years ago, Margaret said, watching my reaction. She was our household manager for nearly 3 years. I stared at the photo, stunned. That's impossible. My mother was a teacher in Ohio. After she left our employment, yes. Margaret's smile was thin. She reinvented herself. People do that when they leave under upsetting circumstances. I looked to Caleb, whose face had drained of color. Did you know this? No, he whispered. I swear, Elise. Margaret continued, as if we hadn't spoken. Emily was quite close with my husband, Victor. Some might say inappropriately close. The implication hung in the air. I felt sick. That's not true, I said firmly. My mother would never. They were friends, Margaret cut in. Very good friends. Victor confided in her, trusted her. Perhaps too much. I struggled to process this information. My mother had never mentioned working for a wealthy family in New York. She'd never spoken of anyone named Victor Grant. When Victor died, Margaret continued, Emily disappeared the very next day. Quite the coincidence, wouldn't you say? Are you suggesting my mother had something to do with your husband's death? The accusation was so absurd, I almost laughed. I'm suggesting, Margaret said, leaning forward, that there are too many coincidences. Your mother vanishes. Years later, her daughter shows up dating my son? You must understand my suspicion. I turned to Caleb, searching his face. Did you know any of this when we met? No, he insisted, gripping my hand tighter. I had no idea until a few weeks ago, when Mother called about this visit. She told me she'd discovered the connection. I wanted to protect you. Daniel snorted from his position behind Margaret. Oh, baby brother always wants to protect everyone, except when it matters. Caleb's eyes flashed with anger. Shut up, Daniel. We can clear this all up very simply, Margaret interjected smoothly. A DNA test would answer many questions. My blood ran cold. What exactly are you implying? Merely that we should rule out certain possibilities. Daniel stepped forward, producing a small plastic kit. Just a cheek swab, Elise. If you have nothing to hide, why are you so afraid of the truth? I stood up, backing away. I'm not giving you my DNA. This is insane. We're leaving. Your car keys seem to have gone missing, Margaret observed calmly. And I'm afraid the cellular service here is quite spotty. Something about the hills. I checked my pocket. The keys were gone. Caleb reached for his phone, only to find it missing as well. What have you done? Caleb demanded. Protected my family, Margaret replied. Which is more than you've done, bringing her into our home. I realized with growing horror that we were effectively trapped. Miles from the nearest neighbor, no transportation, no communication. And Margaret Grant was not the type of woman who would be swayed by pleas or threats. We'll deal with this in the morning, she said, rising gracefully. It's late, and emotions are running high. Daniel will ensure you're comfortable for the night. The way she said comfortable made it clear we were now prisoners, not guests. As Daniel escorted us back upstairs, I noticed new locks on the outside of our bedroom door that hadn't been there earlier. We were locked in as soon as the door closed behind us. This is insane, I whispered to Caleb once we were alone. She can't keep us here against our will. She believes she can do anything, he replied grimly. Money and influence by a lot of latitude. I paced the room, searching for options. The windows were sealed shut, part of the home's energy-efficient renovation, Caleb explained. No phone, no keys, no way to call for help. I need to know everything, Caleb. Now. He sat heavily on the bed. My father died when I was 15. Heart attack, they said. But he was healthy, active. It never made sense. And your mother thinks my mother was involved somehow? She believes your mother and my father were close, and that something happened between them that led to his death. But why would she think I'm involved? I never even met your father. Caleb hesitated. Margaret has always been paranoid. After my father died, she became obsessed with the idea that someone had taken him from her. When she discovered the connection between us, that your mother once worked here, she convinced herself it was all some elaborate revenge plot. I remembered the surveillance photos. She's been having me followed since before we were engaged. Did she orchestrate our meeting too? No, Caleb said firmly. That was real. Everything between us is real. I wanted to believe him, but doubt had taken root. How much of our relationship had been genuine, and how much had been manipulated by the Grant family's twisted game? I moved to the bathroom, away from potentially listening ears, and turned on the shower. Caleb followed. We need to find a landline, I whispered. There must be one somewhere in the house. In the study, Caleb confirmed. But it'll be locked. I found a key earlier. I might be able to get in again. We formulated a plan. I would feign illness in the morning, something that would require me to leave our room, but not serious enough to call a doctor. While Margaret was distracted, I would try to reach the study and call for help. That night, I barely slept. Every creak in the old house made me start. I kept thinking about my mother, the woman I thought I knew, and wondering what secrets she had taken to her grave. In the darkness, I took a small notepad from my purse and wrote a hurried note explaining our situation, with the address of the grand estate and a plea for help. I folded it tightly and hid it in my boot. If I managed to get to a phone, good. If not, perhaps I could pass the note to someone, a delivery person, a neighbor. As dawn broke, I looked out the window at the manicured grounds of the grand estate. From the outside, it was picture perfect. Inside, it was a beautiful trap, designed to hold secrets and suffocate the truth. I turned to Caleb, who was watching me with worried eyes. "Whatever happens," I said quietly, "don't let her separate us." He nodded, taking my hand. "I won't." But as the lock clicked open from the outside, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were already separated by secrets, by history, by the toxic legacy of the Grant family. And I was about to discover just how deep that legacy ran. Morning arrived with artificial cheerfulness. Sunlight streamed through the windows, creating pools of golden light on the hardwood floors. It was the kind of perfect day that made the previous night's events seem like a bad dream, except for the distinct click of the lock being turned from the outside. Daniel opened our door with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Breakfast is ready. Mother expects you both downstairs in 15 minutes. I nodded, keeping my expression neutral even as my mind raced through our options. The moment Daniel left, I turned to Caleb. "I need to get to that phone," I whispered. "Be careful," he murmured, squeezing my hand. "She's watching everything." Downstairs, Margaret presided over breakfast like a queen at court. Everything was immaculate: fresh squeezed orange juice, perfectly poached eggs, warm bread that filled the dining room with a homey scent that felt perversely out of place given our situation. "Sleep well?" Margaret inquired, her voice honeyed. "As well as can be expected when locked in," I replied, watching her reaction. She didn't flinch. "A security measure. This house contains many valuables." I didn't touch my food, remembering Caleb's warning about the tea. Margaret noticed, but didn't comment, simply sipping her own tea with practiced elegance. "Daniel," I said suddenly, turning to Caleb's brother, "your mother seems concerned about your father's death. Did she ever mention to you that she suspected anyone specific?" Daniel's fork paused halfway to his mouth. "Mother has many theories." "Including about you?" I asked innocently. Margaret's teacup clinked sharply against its saucer. "Elise, this is hardly breakfast conversation." But I'd seen it, the flicker of uncertainty in Daniel's eyes. A hairline crack in the family facade. "It's just that Caleb mentioned something about suspicions," I continued, ignoring Margaret's warning glare. "About certain family members being involved. I thought you might know more." Daniel laughed, but it sounded hollow. "Is that what he told you?" "Among other things," I said vaguely, letting his imagination fill in the blanks. Margaret cut in smoothly. "Daniel has always been loyal to this family, unlike some." Her pointed look at Caleb didn't go unnoticed. Another crack formed, this one between mother and sons. After breakfast, I asked to use the bathroom but deliberately took a wrong turn, finding myself in the west wing of the house. I had perhaps 5 minutes before someone came looking. I remembered something Caleb had once mentioned offhandedly, that his father kept a private journal. Victor Grant had been a meticulous man who documented everything, from business dealings to personal reflections. If that journal still existed somewhere in this house, it might contain answers. The library seemed the most logical place to start. The room was impressive, 2 stories of books lining the walls, with a rolling ladder to reach the highest shelves. Where would a man hide his most private thoughts in a house run by a controlling wife? I scanned the room quickly, looking for anything out of place. Nothing obvious stood out. Then I noticed a section of books that seemed dustier than the rest, classics that looked untouched for years. Behind The Count of Monte Cristo was a small lever. When pulled, it revealed a hidden drawer built into the bookcase. Inside lay a leather-bound journal, its pages yellowed with age. The initials VG were embossed on the cover. With trembling hands, I opened it to the final entries. March 15th. M continues with a T. Claims it's for my heart, but I've never felt worse. When I don't drink it, I feel clearer. When I do, the fog returns. I've been secretly testing it. The results are concerning. March 20th. Spoke with Emily today. She agrees something isn't right. Suggested I document everything, keep evidence. Trust no one in this house except her. March 23rd. Found him going through my office again. When confronted, she claimed she was looking for insurance papers. The safe hasn't been touched. What is she searching for? March 25th. Emily says I should leave, just for a while. Clear my head away from here. Em would never allow it. The boys are too under her influence to help. I fear what might happen if. The entry ended abruptly. According to the coroner's report Caleb had mentioned, Victor Grant died on March 26th. I quickly took photos of several pages with my phone, then carefully replaced the journal. As I closed the hidden drawer, I heard footsteps approaching. There you are. Daniel stood in the doorway, arms crossed. Mother was concerned you'd gotten lost. Just admiring the collection, I said, gesturing to the books. Your father had excellent taste. Daniel's eyes narrowed slightly. You seem very interested in my father for someone who never met him. I'm interested in the truth, I replied. Aren't you? A muscle in his jaw twitched. The truth isn't always what we want it to be. Is that what your mother told you? When your father died, so suddenly? His composure slipped for just a moment. You don't know what you're talking about. I know more than you think, I said, taking a calculated risk. I know your mother suspects you had something to do with your father's death. Daniel laughed, but there was no humor in it. Is that what this is? You're trying to turn me against her. I'm just repeating what she said. Another lie, but one that might create the distraction we needed. She's never trusted you, has she? Always favored Caleb, despite his rebellion. Why do you think that is? You're playing a dangerous game, Daniel warned, but doubt had crept into his expression. Am I? Or is she? I moved toward the door. Maybe you should ask yourself why she's so desperate to keep certain secrets buried. I brushed past him, heart pounding. The seeds of doubt had been planted. Now I needed to find Caleb and share what I discovered. I found him in the garden with Margaret, engaged in what appeared to be a tense conversation. When he saw me, relief washed over his face. Everything okay? He asked, eyes searching mine. Fine, I replied, giving him a meaningful look. Just getting to know the house better. Margaret's smile was brittle. Daniel found you, I assume?
He did.
We had an interesting conversation about family loyalty. Something flashed in Margaret's eyes. Concern, perhaps even fear. Good. The cracks were spreading. Throughout the day, I carefully fed Daniel's suspicions whenever Margaret wasn't around. Small comments about his mother's paranoia, questions about why she might have wanted Victor's estate for herself, observations about how much control she exerted over the family fortune. Meanwhile, I shared my discoveries with Caleb in hushed whispers whenever we could steal a moment alone. Your father suspected your mother was poisoning him, I told him during a brief moment in our room. The journal mentions tea specifically. Caleb's face went pale. Like the tea she offered you.
Exactly.
And he trusted my mother. They were friends. He told her about his suspicions. Which is why she left immediately after he died, Caleb realized. She was afraid. We need to get out of here, I said urgently.
Tonight.
Your mother is unraveling, and Daniel is a wild card. We formulated a plan. During dinner, I would create a distraction, something to drive a wedge between Margaret and Daniel. While they were at odds, Caleb would find the spare car keys he knew were kept in the kitchen drawer. That evening, we gathered in the dining room one last time. The tension was palpable, with Daniel watching his mother through narrowed eyes and Margaret maintaining her perfect hostess facade despite the obvious strain. I waited until the main course was served before making my move. I've been thinking about Victor's death, I said casually, cutting into my untouched steak. It's interesting that no autopsy was performed. The table went silent. Margaret's smile vanished. That was a private family matter, she said coldly. Was it? Or was it because an autopsy might have revealed something in his system? Something in the tea, perhaps? Daniel's head snapped up. What are you talking about? I turned to him. Your father kept a journal.
Did you know that?
He documented his suspicions in the weeks before his death. Margaret's knuckles whitened around her fork. This is absurd. Caleb, control your wife. I've seen the journal, Caleb said quietly. It's true. Daniel pushed back from the table. Is this why you've been acting strange since we arrived? You found something and didn't tell me. Would you have believed me? Caleb challenged. You've always taken her side. Maybe it's time we stop pretending, Daniel snapped, turning to Margaret. Maybe it's time we admit what this family really is. Margaret's composure finally cracked. You think you're entitled to the truth? You couldn't handle the truth about this family. As their voices rose, I caught Caleb's eye and nodded slightly. While Margaret and Daniel were locked in their increasingly heated argument, he slipped out of the dining room toward the kitchen. I stayed, keeping the fight going with carefully placed comments until I saw Caleb return, giving me the barest nod to indicate he'd found the keys. This conversation is over, Margaret declared, standing abruptly. Daniel, we'll discuss this privately. It was the opening we needed. As they stormed off to Margaret's study, Caleb and I made our way quickly and quietly to the front door. Now, I whispered. We go now. We didn't bother with our bags. Freedom mattered more than possessions. Caleb led the way to the garage where a second car, an older model SUV, was parked. We slipped inside, and Caleb inserted the key with shaking hands. The engine roared to life just as the front door burst open. Margaret stood there, her perfect composure shattered, her face contorted with rage. Stop them, she screamed, and Daniel sprinted toward the garage. Caleb floored the accelerator, and we shot down the driveway, gravel spraying behind us. In the rearview mirror, I saw Daniel racing to another vehicle parked near the house. They're following us, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. I know a back way, Caleb replied grimly, veering off the main driveway onto a dirt road that wound through the woods surrounding the estate. It's rough, but it'll get us to the highway. The SUV bounced violently as we sped down the unmaintained road, branches scraping against the windows. Behind us, headlights appeared, Daniel's car, gaining ground on the narrow path. He knows these roads too, Caleb muttered. Probably better than I do. It's been years since I've been back here. I pulled out my phone. I have a signal. It's weak, but... Call 911, Caleb urged, swerving to avoid a fallen branch. My fingers trembled as I dialed, the phone pressed to my ear as the car jolted over the uneven terrain. 911, what's your emergency? The operator's voice was faint but clear. My name is Elise Grant. My husband and I are being pursued after being held against our will at the Grant estate in Westchester County, I said as calmly as I could. We're currently on a back road heading toward Highway 22. Can you describe the vehicle following you? I glanced back. Black SUV, closing fast. The driver is Daniel Grant. We're in a silver Honda CR-V. Stay on the line, Mrs. Grant. I'm dispatching officers to your location. The dirt road widened slightly as we approached what appeared to be an old bridge spanning a ravine. Just as we reached it, Daniel's SUV pulled alongside us, attempting to force us off the road. Hold on, Caleb shouted, jerking the wheel to avoid collision. Our car swerved violently, nearly hitting a tree. The front tire caught the edge of the road, and we spun, coming to a stop mere feet from the bridge's guardrail. Steam hissed from under the hood. The engine's damaged, Caleb said, trying to restart the car. We have to go on foot. Daniel's SUV had skidded to a stop several yards ahead. As we watched, he began to turn around to come back for us. Into the woods, I urged, grabbing Caleb's arm.
Now.
We abandoned the car and ran into the thick forest bordering the road. Behind us, I heard a car door slam and Daniel shouting our names. The woods were dense, shadows deepening as the sun began to set. Caleb led the way, moving with surprising confidence through the underbrush. There's an old ranger station about half a mile from here, he whispered. We used to explore these woods as kids. I followed closely, trying to stay silent despite the twigs snapping underfoot. My boot caught on a root, and I stumbled, barely catching myself against a tree trunk. The note I'd hidden in my boot fell out, but there was no time to retrieve it. Daniel's voice was getting closer. We pushed on, moving as quickly as we dared in the fading light. Finally, a small structure appeared ahead, the abandoned ranger station, its wooden walls weathered by years of neglect. Around the back, Caleb directed, pulling me toward the rear of the building where a small door hung partially off its hinges. We slipped inside just as Daniel's flashlight beams swept through the trees behind us. The interior was musty and dark, with broken furniture scattered across the floor. We crouched behind what remained of a desk, holding our breath as footsteps circled the building. "I know you're here somewhere," Daniel called, his voice unnervingly calm. "This can all be resolved if you just come back to the house. Mother's worried about you both." Neither of us moved. The footsteps paused outside the back door, and I gripped Caleb's hand so tightly my knuckles ached. Then, in the distance, a sound that made my heart leap, sirens, growing louder by the second. Daniel heard them too. His footsteps quickened, moving away from the station and back toward the road. Moments later, we heard a car engine revving, then fading as he retreated. We waited until the sirens were close before emerging from our hiding place. 2 police cruisers had pulled up beside our abandoned vehicle, and officers were scanning the area with flashlights. "Here," I called, waving my arms. "We're here." The officers approached cautiously, hands near their weapons until they confirmed our identities. While one took our statements, the other radioed for backup to investigate the Grant estate. "You're saying this woman, Margaret Grant, held you against your will?" the officer asked, notepad in hand. "Yes," I replied firmly. "She locked us in a room, took our phones and car keys, and prevented us from leaving. When we managed to escape, her son Daniel chased us in another vehicle." "We have evidence," Caleb added. "Photos of a journal belonging to my late father, Victor Grant, suggesting my mother may have been poisoning him before his death." The officer's eyebrows rose. "That's a serious accusation." "We also have surveillance photos proving Margaret Grant has been having Elise followed for over a year," Caleb continued. "They're in her study at the house." While we gave our statements, additional police cars arrived and headed toward the Grant estate. We were escorted to the station to file a formal report, the adrenaline finally ebbing from my system, leaving me exhausted and shaking. Hours later, we received news that the police had searched the estate. Margaret had denied everything, claiming I was mentally unstable and had imagined the whole scenario. But the evidence didn't lie. The hidden journal was found exactly where I described it, along with the surveillance photos and files bearing my name. Most damning of all was the tea. Analysis would later confirm it contained a potent blend of herbs with sedative and hallucinogenic properties, not lethal in small doses, but capable of causing confusion, suggestibility, and memory loss with prolonged use. Margaret Grant was taken into custody pending further investigation. Daniel had disappeared by the time the police arrived at the estate, his whereabouts unknown. As we sat in the police station, wrapped in scratchy blankets and sipping tasteless coffee, Caleb looked at me with a mixture of guilt and relief. "I'm so sorry," he whispered. "I never should have brought you there." I took his hand. "You couldn't have known how far she would go." But as the night wore on and the reality of what we'd experienced sank in, I couldn't help wondering how much of our relationship had been genuine and how much had been shaped by Margaret Grant's obsession with the past. The woman had been willing to drug me, to trap us, all because of a suspicion about my mother's connection to her husband's death years ago. What other secrets lay buried in the perfect facade of the Grant family legacy? For now, though, we were safe. We had escaped, and that would have to be enough. 6 weeks after our escape from the Grant estate, life had begun to find a new rhythm. We'd moved temporarily to a small apartment in the city, far from the shadows of upstate New York. The legal process against Margaret was moving forward, though slowly. The Grant family's connections ensured every step was contested and delayed. I was sitting at our kitchen table, sorting through mail, when an official-looking envelope caught my attention. The return address showed a law firm I didn't recognize, Whitaker and Associates. "Caleb," I called, slicing the envelope open carefully. "Did you contact another lawyer?" He appeared from the bedroom, brow furrowed.
No.
"Why?" I pulled out a formal letter on heavy stationery. "It's from someone named James Whitaker. He says he was your father's personal attorney." Caleb sat down heavily across from me. Dad had a separate lawyer from the family firm? I never knew that. We read the letter together. Dear Mrs. Grant, I represent the estate of the late Victor Grant in matters pertaining to his personal affairs, separate from the Grant family holdings. It has come to my attention through recent events that you are the daughter of Emily Carter. This information is relevant to a matter I have been holding in trust for nearly 20 years. Victor Grant left behind an updated will and testament just days before his death. This document was never executed, as Mrs. Margaret Grant presented a different will to the probate court, one that predated the version in my possession. Without evidence of foul play at the time, I was unable to contest the proceedings. The updated will contains a substantial trust fund established for Emily Carter, with explicit instructions that should anything happen to him, she was to be provided for in recognition of her loyalty and friendship during difficult times. As Miss Carter is deceased, you, as her only child, are the legal beneficiary of this trust. Please contact my office at your earliest convenience to discuss this matter further. Sincerely, James Whitaker, ESQ. I stared at the letter, stunned. A trust fund? For my mother? This is why my mother was so obsessed with you, Caleb said quietly. She must have known about this will, or at least suspected its existence. That's why she was so desperate to find a connection between you and my father. But there wasn't one, not the way she imagined, I replied. They were friends. He trusted her. And my mother couldn't accept that, Caleb finished. It had to be something more sinister in her mind. In the days that followed, we met with James Whitaker. The elderly attorney seemed relieved to finally fulfill Victor's wishes after so many years. The trust, with its accumulated interest, was substantial, enough to give us financial independence from the Grant family forever. But money wasn't the only revelation. Whitaker also had letters, written by Victor to my mother but never sent, describing his fears about Margaret's controlling behavior and his concerns for his son's well-being under her influence. She's molding them in her image. One letter read. Daniel embraces it, becoming her perfect soldier. Caleb resists, but the pressure is immense. I fear what will become of my boys if anything happens to me. Caleb read these letters with tears in his eyes, finally understanding his father in a way Margaret had never allowed when Victor was alive. The legal proceedings against Margaret continued. The evidence from Victor's journal, combined with the drug tea and our imprisonment, led to multiple charges. Daniel eventually resurfaced in Europe, cutting a deal with prosecutors to testify against his mother in exchange for immunity. Margaret's perfect facade crumbled under public scrutiny. The Grant family name, once synonymous with old money respectability, became linked to scandal and secrets. For Caleb, it was both painful and liberating to watch the mythology of his family dissolve. I've been carrying this weight my whole life, he confessed one evening as we sat on our new apartment balcony, watching the sunset. Living up to the Grant legacy, running from it, fighting against it. I never knew who I really was apart from it. I took his hand. And now I get to decide. We get to decide. Our relationship had been tested by the ordeal at the estate. For weeks afterward, I grappled with doubt. Had Caleb truly been ignorant of his mother's plans, or had some part of him known? In my darkest moments, I even wondered if our meeting had been orchestrated from the beginning. But healing came gradually. We attended counseling together and separately. I worked through the trauma with a therapist who specialized in family betrayal. Some days were harder than others, but I was determined not to let Margaret Grant's poison seep into the life Caleb and I were building. One crisp autumn day, I visited my mother's grave for the first time since learning the truth about her connection to the Grants. I placed fresh flowers against a simple headstone and sat on the cool grass beside it. They try to silence you, I whispered. I didn't let them. I left a small note tucked among the flowers, words I hoped would reach her somehow, telling her that Victor's wishes had finally been honored, that the truth had come to light. The story broke in the media eventually, despite our efforts to keep it private. Headlines painted lurid pictures of the scandal. Grant family matriarch faces charges in decades-long conspiracy. Reporters called constantly, eager for interviews we refused to give. Instead, we moved forward. We relocated to Portland, a city neither of us had any connection to, a fresh start. Caleb found work with a nonprofit environmental law firm, using his legal background for causes he believed in rather than family obligations. I opened a small art therapy studio, focusing particularly on women who had experienced manipulation and gaslighting. We cut ties with anyone connected to the grants, changed our phone numbers, created new social media accounts under different names. It wasn't hiding, we told ourselves. It was reclaiming our narrative. Then, 6 months after we'd settled into our new life, an unmarked envelope arrived at our P.O. box, the address known only to a handful of trusted friends. Inside was a photograph of my mother that I'd never seen before. She was young, perhaps in her early 20s, smiling directly at the camera. The picture was dated the day after Victor Grant's death, the day she disappeared from the Grant estate. There was no note, no return address. Just the photograph, a moment in time captured as my mother embarked on her escape from the Grant family's toxic orbit, just as Caleb and I had done. I studied it for a long time, tracing my finger over her familiar features, the eyes I saw in the mirror every day, the smile that appeared in my own rare moments of pure joy. Then, calmly, I locked it away in a small box where I kept my most precious mementos. Some truths were meant to be found, brought into the light after years of darkness. Others we would never fully uncover, mysteries that shaped us nonetheless. And perhaps that was okay. The past had its place, but it didn't have to define our future. That evening, as Caleb and I walked hand in hand along the waterfront of our new city, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Peace. Not the false peace of ignorance or denial, but the hard-won tranquility that comes from facing darkness and emerging on the other side. Whatever Margaret had intended with her poisoned tea, her surveillance, her manipulation, she had failed. The truth, like water, had found its way out despite her efforts to contain it. And we had survived not in spite of the truth, but because of it. What would you do if you discovered your entire marriage was built on a foundation of secrets and surveillance? Like and subscribe for more psychological thrillers where family legacies become deadly traps, and the truth is never what it first appears to be.